whatever, but this one does, so, yeah, so. That's on, you're on camera.
They have that in the legislature, most of the committee hearings. Don't mind zooming on who's talking and on the floor.
We're good to go.
We're good to go?
We are good to go.
Yeah, I'll call this meeting to order. Today, March 17th, the time is 1:30. The purpose of this meeting is a Compass Executive special meeting, Executive Committee special meeting. I'll ask Craig to call a roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rod Beck,
Here.
Trevor Chadwick, Tricia Nelson,
Here.
Jimmy Halliburton,
Here.
Rick Hogebone,
Here.
Brad Holton, Dan Heyer, here, Lindy Lindstrom, Mary May,
Here.
Matt Newton,
Here.
John Overton,
Here.
Eric Phillips, Joe Steer.
Here.
We have a quorum.
We have quorum. Thank you very much. Okay, the first item on the agenda is the open discussion and announcements. Is there any open discussion and announcements? No announcements. I'll give an announcement. The first professional soccer game will be held April the 4th in Ada County. At Expo.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I do have an announcement.
Okay.
Tomorrow night, Wednesday, the 18th, the Treasure Valley Partnership will be holding a forum, town hall at Eagle, at City Hall in Eagle at 6 o'clock tomorrow night. Everybody's welcome.
Yes,
Sure, Trevor wouldn't make it.
I'll be there. Well, I'd have made it myself because it's an open invitation to
Everybody.
anyone that wants to be there. It's a town hall type of format where we'll be discussing issues that the Treasure Valley Partnership deals with. Okay, any other announcements or discussion? Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. You've seen the consent agenda. Y'all had a chance to look at it. I would accept the motion.
Mr. Chair, I move we approve the February 10th, 2026 Executive Committee meeting minutes.
Second.
Okay, you've heard the motion. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None? Motion carries. All right, now we have a few action items. The first action item is to establish the company board meetings agenda. So I'll go ahead and let Craig talk about that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the list of potential items starts on page 5 in your packet. The initial set are sort of standard items, approving minutes from recent board meeting, approving minutes from executive committee meetings, approving minutes from finance committee meeting. Then we have some other reports that will sometimes be included, and we'll put those in as they're necessary. And then starting on page 6, we have the more traditional agenda items as well. So among the items that we typically do for the April meeting is approving the extension delivery or approving an extension of the delivery deadlines for some of the local federal aid projects. These are the ones where for whatever various reasons they're not done on time, but the sponsors are assuring us that they'll still get done in the fiscal year, and so we move the date back so that we don't treat those as if they're not making progress and we don't have to do any kind of reprogramming to those. And Tony does a really good job of staying on top of those, and we tend to put those in the consent agenda for this time around, and if there are any sort of emergencies that arise in the future, we can have a more frank discussion in June. But these are the ones like they're just a little behind on some of the right-of-way agreements, things like that. The next item that we're anticipating, and this one may still, it's something that we have to sign. It's just an updated memorandum of understanding relating to the State Street, so 44 corridor implementation coordination effort that we have been participating in for a number of years. There's an agreement in place right now, but for some reason I think there's some changes to participation or something like that, and so they're circulating a new one. It doesn't financially commit Compass to anything, but you'll get a chance to see that agreement. I think actually, to be honest, I think it's probably something that I could sign because I could just sign without board action, but we're going to put it on consent anyway, so you'll get a chance to see it. Then we'll have a to be determined member agency presentation.
No, that
No, we will
was
not.
removed because of time.
Yeah, it's a full agenda, so in the interest of everyone's time, we're not gonna actually do that. Report from the finance committee. And then we'll move into the action items. So we'll be discussing today Elmore County's membership request. And so that would be an action item at the April meeting. Then we'll have the 2026 population estimates for approval, and then immediately following that, the dues for approval, since those are derived from the population numbers. Then, if necessary, we'll have a resolution to amend the TIP. We do have a few projects that look like we'll be making amendments there. We'll know for sure after, I think, the RTAC meeting scheduled for next week. Then similarly, we'll seek the board's acceptance of the local federal aid program based on RTAC's approval of their ranking process, but that'll also be for action. Then moving to page 8 of your packet, just a status report about the Communities in Motion 2055 project prioritization process. And then I'll give what by April 27th will hopefully be a report on what the legislature finished and is now done with, and is not actually going to still be some kind of a continuation that they're still underway. But I'll just give an update on the legislative report to them. And then after that, the rest of the pages of this portion of your packet are just covering projected June items, but we're not setting that agenda, but they're in there so you can get a chance to see what's anticipated. So, Mr. Chair, what we usually look for is the motion approving what I ran through, and then giving me the flexibility if a new item comes up or something doesn't need to go into the packet to not have to include that one.
Okay, is there any discussion on the proposed agenda for the next board meeting? Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, Craig, on item 18, I see that's going to Arts Act in April and the board in April. Is that doable?
Let me see. Yes, because it's just a status item.
Okay.
It's not there's no action on that one.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or discussions before we accept the motion on the proposed agenda for the upcoming board meeting? All right, then I would accept the motion, and the motion should include the approval of the agenda and the flexibility to alter the agenda if needed.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Okay, is there any misunderstanding or clear what the motion is? I think everybody understands what the motion is, so the motion has been made, seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Oppose if there's any. There being none, the motion carries. Okay, we have a request for 2 members of the board for travel. Craig will go through that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So yes, this is a request for the executive committee to authorize travel for Mayor Chadwick and council member Mary May to attend the NARC annual conference from June 7th to 9th in Tulsa.
I would accept a NARC report. Okay, is there any discussion on the approval of the board travel? 2 board members travel. Hearing none, I'll accept the motion.
Move that we approve the travel request for Trevor Chadwick and Mary May.
Second. Okay, you've heard the motion and the second. Is there any further discussion? It is to Tulsa. Okay. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, if there be any? Thank you. The motion carries. Next, we have a request to a change of the funding policy for the surface transportation block grant funds. And Craig's going to give us an idea on that one. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think most of you are probably familiar with what we do here. So we have since 2001 taken a small portion of the surface transportation block grant funds that are made available to the region and applied those to Compass for planning activities. That amount that we're currently at right now was set in 2007 and has not changed since 2007. In that time, inflation, depending on exactly which measure you want to use, has gone up anywhere from I think 68% or 67% to 98%. And in fact, if you look at construction projects, which don't really apply, but they've actually gone up about 300%. Is the construction cost index. So what we're seeking is a one-time adjustment of that amount to bring it a little bit closer. It's not fully bringing it into compliance, both for Compass and for the ACHD commuter ride programs. So theirs would go would increase 50% from their current amount, and ours would go up 45% from the current amount. And then the second piece of this would be making it a regular annual 2% increase, which is what we use for cost inflation estimates in the TIP as a whole. In the time since this has gone into place, if you look on page 15 in the packet, right in the middle there's the number that we used as the available amount, the example available amount for the total amount of surface transportation block grant funds that come in for the urbanized area, for the transportation management area. So the Boise urbanized area was 10.8 million. Even since fiscal year 2022, that's the fiscal year 26 number is closer to 12.6 million. So even that amount has been inflating, but the off the top amount that we've been taking for commuter ride and for Compass has not been changing. We'll also note that Safe Routes to School starts coming out of this as well next fiscal year. It had been coming from the Transportation Alternatives Program, but the board a few years ago made this other change. We're not seeking a change in that amount because when it starts coming out of surface transportation block grant funds, it's already going to be a higher level than what they were receiving before. The total net amount, just so you know, for ACHD's commuter ride program would go from 275,000 a year of these off the top funds to 413,000. So like I said, a 50% increase. Compasses would go from a total of 331,000 to 480,000, a 45% increase. And these are in the table on page 14 in your packets. Also, I think I have one more note on this. I'm not finding it right now, but oh yeah, it's that so there are two pots of money that our total amount comes from. They come from the money that Compass actually controls that come to the transportation management area, and then they come from the large urban area, which is the one that all of the cities between 50 and 200, all the urbanized areas in the state between 50 and 200,000. So the other 5 MPOs. And we distribute those amounts by agreement between, we meet quarterly and we work out exactly how those funds get distributed. And so they're programmed and shared. So it will, and we treat these funds as kind of etched in stone. They're still off the top, but they will probably take a couple of years to phase in that request with them. So we'll, we may be able to get it all right out of the gate, but it's possible that it'll take time to kind of phase those in with them, and we'll work with the other MPOs on those shared resources. But that pot of money is doing similar things. It's growing as a whole as well, and so this is really just intended to be essentially an inflation correction, and then keeping it in place over time.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions from the board? Go ahead.
I have one, only because I'm naive and new to this committee. What we're talking about is increasing. Is it an overhead cost that Compass would be receiving for additional workload
they're going to the 413,000 from 275, or is this money that's distributed around? So, I didn't quite understand how that works.
Well, we can actually use it for any of the activities that Compass undertakes, as long as it's federally eligible, which is very, very broad. And so it's primarily used just to support, I think, if I could maybe refer to Meg, do we even specify exactly how this is applied, or does it go into the pot as if it's treated like planning funds?
Thank you, Craig. It is treated like planning funds, so we do apply it to our staff costs, but we would also programs, planning programs, technical services, etc.
Sure, I have a comment, and this isn't the right time for that. Just once again, because I'm trying to learn how the system works. To me, when I read through this, it kind of seemed like this would be a tough year to really add an increase like this when everybody else is looking at big cuts through the legislature. Would it be absolutely detrimental for us to postpone this a year till we can see what's going on and not take these large increases when everybody else is having decreases?
If I could, so this is a different pot of money. These are federal dollars. So the legislature doesn't touch these. And one of the reasons that we're able to do this, as well as the next item on the agenda and seek those funds too, is we had a set of low bids come in for some other projects. And although we've already addressed a lot of those, it's basically freed up the funds to do this as a one-time adjustment. And then the overall net long-term effect, that we're talking about here, is $280,000, $290,000 a year plus 2% inflation, and we'll be able to absorb that in the overall annual programming that we do without disrupting projects.
Lastly, Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead.
Director. I agree with your logic. I agree with where you're coming from. I just think that from my perspective, it doesn't look great. Even though it is coming from federal funds for our budget to increase so substantially when everybody else's districts and little heavy districts are looking at it. So that's just my 2 cents. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
I just give you a little bit of history. I think it's been 20 years since I worked at Compass. The off the top tended to represent activities that NPO's kind of going to do anyway, or activities that are highly valued by its members. And that's, commuter ride, and I'll put safe routes. And then obviously planning is why they exist. So the benefits, by having it off the top, you provide more certainty in those programs. They don't have to apply every year and cross their fingers that they're going to get money. And I'll speak to the NAMPA, where it's part of the competitive dollars. They actually lost staff because of funding shortfalls. And for the Ada County portion of being housed with the Y, that has been so stable now and predictable that those staff are incredibly experienced and knowledgeable and have good relationships with the schools, that's the benefit of off the top. And so to me, this action is just kind of resetting what's a good funding level that we as a board find value in, without taking adversely impacting other programs or projects. So that's just my 2 cents, how I look at it.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Is there any other discussion or questions or anything?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Great. Just kind of a follow-up. I know we said this is all federal funds, but just so the question gets asked, does this cause any increase to the annual dues paid by any of the member agencies in Compass?
We would, it increases the amount of match that we have to cover from our dues, but our dues rate has remained unchanged for many, many years. The dues have been changing because of population growth, so they're set at a per capita basis.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any other questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Just a clarifying question on the 50 and 45, the 50% increase on the ACHD and the 45% on Compass. It doesn't, the proportionate percent increase, is yeah, slightly different with the ACHD, compared to the Compass. So I'm just trying to understand the historical context on the 50 and the 45, how you got that.
Okay.
Sure. What we actually did is we talked with the operators of commuter ride at ACHD. And their request, I mean, what they would like to request is quite a bit more. But they were comfortable with the 50%. We were also comfortable just trying to get as close as we could to equalizing based on inflation, and for us that worked out to 45%. There was no real magic, no real reasoning between those, other than we didn't want to have the change be enough that it would start to get to the point where it could start to impact the construction projects that are really the focus of the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program.
Okay, Craig, thanks for that explanation, Mr. Chair. I have no further questions.
Okay, are there any other questions or discussions? There's one thing I think you might want to be prepared for the board meeting, because these are just recommendations that we sent to the board. That is, why has this gone since 2007 without any kind of increase or adjustment? I know you wouldn't have that answer, but you may could you haven't been here that long. But you may be able to search amongst the staff, or at least reach out, because I think that question might come up, because it's been 2007 since this changed. And by the way, I think you mentioned earlier that the 10 million that's in there now is already scheduled to be up to 12 million. Is that correct?
Yeah, if I could, the full apportionment to the Boise Transportation Management area for fiscal year 26 is 12.6 million, 12.7 million, actually 12.68 million. So yeah, even that baseline number has been going up.
So it could safely say that we could be asking for another small increase next year.
Well, it was part of what we're seeking this time is to build it in and just assume that there's going to be this 2% increase. Now, I will also note, as the federal program does go through its reauthorization, if somehow the factors around those numbers changed, we would try to come back and change the policy. Like, for example, if there are proposals, I'll just note, there are at the federal level right now, there are proposals all over the place as to what the baseline overall federal number for transportation is going to be. And then within that, there are a nearly infinite range of possibilities for how those dollars get divvied up between the different funding programs and between the different levels of states and urban regions and so on. And so, certainly a possibility would be that baseline number for planning activities goes up. And we wouldn't necessarily need the annual increases then in the funding. And if that were to be the case, I report that back to the board and we can take the appropriate action at that point.
Okay, well, that's good enough. Is there any other discussion or questions or any clarification that might be necessary?
Yeah, just a quick
Go ahead.
comment.
Go ahead.
Jay Halliburton, City of
Halliburton.
Boise. Yep. So just kind of noting here that like this hasn't been indexed to inflation in the past, and so it has fallen quite a bit behind. I do think that planning for that 2% probably makes sense, but I also think keeping an eye on that 2%, depending on what happens with inflation, if it's further up, further down, if costs are going up or costs are going down, that 2% continues to make sense. So I think that continuing to do that is smart, but I think evaluating it, on a yearly basis is probably good as well.
If I could, just a quick response.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you for that. We do track that. We keep on top of that every year, and that 2% number is what we use. It's a number that's agreed upon for inflation with ITD and the other NPOs. And so that's why we're using that, but we do track that annually. I don't think it's changed in a while. And so for those who've been participating in the board, there were a number of years, I imagine, where we were seeing regular cost inflation that was approaching 20 to 30% on project costs. I think that's part of why these funds kind of freed up this year, is because that has finally slowed back down again to a more normal inflation rate.
All right, unless there's any other discussion that needs to be had, I'll accept the motion. Is there a motion?
Yeah, well, but I don't know how to pay.
The motion would be to send it to approve this, to send
Approve
it to the board for final consideration.
So moved, yes.
Second,
Maybe so second. Okay. All right, you've all heard the motion. Is there any question or discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Well, be that one. Nay.
One opposed, okay.
I voted aye.
Yeah, there's one opposed here in the board. All right, go ahead. No, that's noted. Okay, moving on, we have the request to add planning activities and increase company budget. And Greg will give us that information. So it starts on page 17.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this one is similar but different in that this is for specific projects. It's also specifically utilizing those additional funds that have been freed up because during bids for projects that would have been expended in fiscal year 2026, a number of projects came in with low bids. The state does not allow us to carry those over. We have worked with RTAC and are continuing to work with RTAC and the jurisdictions to identify ways to spend that. The total amount of that was over $3 million of not carryover, but freed up funds that were for the transportation management area portion. We've already worked with agencies, and RTAC has a recommendation that'll go to the board through that balancing process that already consumes about half of those dollars. And we've got most of the other figured out as well that we'll take to RTAC next week for them to put a recommendation to the board. The reason this is coming to you today is these are projects that over the course of my time here in the last year that I think Compass and the region would benefit greatly by having the data that one of these would put together and then having the tools that the other two of these would put together or would be able to provide us. And so I'll run through what these activities would be and then noting that this isn't an expenditure of, we're not drawing from any new source of revenue. It's dollars that come to the region that we have to spend this year. And I'll note that another one of the takeaways for me from this exercise has been a realization that we collectively probably need to do a better job of having projects in the pipeline that are ready to go when we get access to additional funds. So with all of that said, the first of the efforts or the planning studies or activities that I'm proposing is a poll of transportation expectations, preferences, and priorities for the region, so that we would actually be able to know what residents want and prioritize and prefer from the transportation system, and be able to communicate that to the board, be able to communicate that to the various other activities that are happening around the region relating to transportation, and be able to communicate those to the legislature as necessary through our lobbying efforts that, I mean, this year's starting to wrap up, but we're going to have one next year again, and we want to be able to make sure that we can speak with really good authority about what the residents of our region, our member agencies are looking for. And so this would be a poll that is going to be statistically valid to the level of the larger jurisdictions and each of the counties that are part of the region right now. So we'd be able to know the differences too, not just Treasure Valley as a whole or Ada Canyon, Boise County as a whole, but the region by some of the sub areas as well. And so you have a better understanding of your board member, what your residents are looking for as well. I'll note that I conducted a similar activity years ago when I was the director for the MPO in Las Vegas region, and it was incredibly valuable information for people to be able to understand what it is we're doing, why we're planning, what we're planning. We didn't there, but we could easily, we could learn something that would want to, potentially influence what it is, what types of studies and future activities that Compass wants to undertake. But this was very valuable information in the past when I've had access to it. And so that's the first of the recommendation. The next two are tools that Compass currently, we have one of them is a tool that we currently have that's starting to get dated, and I'll talk about one of the challenges with that. Another one is one that we had and operated for a few years, and it fell out of use, but I think is a really valuable tool. So the first of these is a fiscal impact tool. So that's a tool that we use to assess the fiscal impact, obviously, on local agencies for development that's happening in those areas. It's primarily, like I said, it's primarily focused on development, but I think we can build in a way that has some other potential applications. But it lets us look at, say there's going to be a 500 rooftop development that goes in a particular jurisdiction. We're able to, based on the development as it's proposed, we can assess what its short and long-term budget impacts are, and at what point it's going to it would actually break even in the revenue that it generates for the local governments. And we break that down by city, county, school district, and the highway districts. And so for every development that comes in, and I've been going around, I did one, I did my roadshow presentation that I've done for many of you. I did that last night in Caldwell, and so they've had 67 development reviews that have gone through, and we've used this tool or its previous iteration, and so we're able, with each one of those, we're able to provide, as part of that development decision process that the local agencies make. We don't make those decisions, but we've been able to provide them with a number that says this project will cost you money for the first 7 years, but then it starts to make you money, or whatever those timeframes start to look like, and we share that then back with them. One of the challenges with this tool is it gets dated, so we need to update it regularly. But another one that has come up a couple of times recently is that it is not. It's a proprietary tool per the terms of the agreement that we made with the vendor. Frankly, one of my pet peeves has always been we use our money and our member agencies' data to put together something that then we can't provide. So the way it works now is, in order for us to use it, in order for us to give you guys this data, we ask, or you provide us with all of the information about the development, and then we process it and can turn around and give it to you, but we can't show you the black box. And we want to build something that would allow us to do that. So they're pretty well established procedures for how to do this kind of thing. And I just want to turn it into something that becomes a more publicly available tool. Another thing I'll note with this one and the next tool that I'm going to describe is I think there are also, given some of the advances in in artificial intelligence techniques, I think there are maybe some ways that we can accelerate both the development and the ways in which it's provided and applied, that we'd be able to explore. And those may also allow us to accomplish the development of these at a lower cost as well. So we'll try that first, but I'm asking upfront for the full amount. And if we can do it cheaper, we'll obviously do that and try to recognize those savings as well. The third item is what we call the performance measure framework. And so if you were involved with Compass, if you've been involved with Compass over the years, I think a few of you have in the room, and know this tool. And in fact, part of what spurred my interest in this is, I watched the ACHD meeting between ACHD and ITD about State Highway 16. And one of the questions that Commissioner Nielsen asked was, what are the impacts of this going to be when it's done? What is it going to do to, to development patterns and quality of life questions and things like that? And we had this tool that we used to be able to use for transportation projects to be able to assess what those impacts on the performance measures that we've adopted in our planning activities would be. And so the ability to look at a project and say, these are the benefits of this project, can be really valuable, not just in making a rational cost-based decision. So you can say, well, the project's going to cost $20 million and it's going to generate $55 million of benefit over whatever time frame, and you say that's a good cost benefit analysis. But it also gives us the ability to communicate the benefits as well. And so I think that's really important too, is to be able to say, the sum effect of all of the activities that we're talking about along this corridor is going to be a safety improvement of, one fewer fatality every 2 years. And yeah, it's a weird kind of abstract number, but it's tangible, and it lets us tell stories about the benefits of what it is that we're providing. And so this is also a tool, I think, that we will explore using artificial intelligence to be able to accelerate its development and how it works. But if that doesn't work and we end up following a more traditional base, we're proposing it, that more traditional approach, because we don't know for sure that we'd be able to make the other approach work, but we'd start that way too. And I think that basically explains what we're looking for. The total amount of all of these is about $1 million. So it's $400,000 for the poll. That's so that we can get a statistically valid sample that goes down to those smaller geographies. It won't, just to be clear, like I told Councilmember Heyer, I won't be, in order to do a poll like that for like the city of Greenleaf, you can't sample. You have to basically count. You have to survey everyone. And so we will probably, for the more rural areas, it'll probably be at the non-urban county level or something like that. But we would work with whoever is actually hired to do the work for that. And another thing that we'll try to do with this is save some costs by trying to partner with a university to conduct the survey work. That my experience is that's quite a bit less expensive and can sometimes be quicker as well.
All right, well, thank you. Is there any discussions or questions? Go ahead, Chairman.
Director, where does the $1 million, where are we arriving at, we're getting the money?
Okay, so that's the money that, if I could, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So that's the money that has been freed up by the low bids on these other projects. And like I said, it's money that we're not allowed to carry over. So if we don't spend it as a region, and I mean, like I said, that total amount was about, I might defer to Tony if she's online. I think she is, to tell us what it was, like 3.3 million total, I believe, she doesn't have to speak up, but we've already accommodated some of that, working with RTAC and the jurisdictions. Quite a bit of that. We have a few other projects that we know about as well. And so we're trying to, make sure that we're able to get the construction projects that are in the works that maybe could be accelerated, to have those go first, and then we would, this is basically the funds that we're not able to identify. And transportation projects take time to develop, and so it's difficult to just come up with something to build on such short notice.
Are these not excess funds that have already been approved?
That's basically, yeah, they are excess, they're basically excess funds.
One follow-up.
Go ahead.
Is this a one-time cost, or other than the maintenance fees for whatever might be related to the
Yeah.
software, or is this gonna be a one-time kind of deal, or is this an annual?
No, these, if I could,
Yes,
so
yeah.
these would be, these are the development costs for those items, and then we don't currently, there's staff time that ends up being involved, but we build that into the activities that we undertake. And there could be some software costs, but we wouldn't be like, this would not be like an annual, every year we need to spend $200,000 to do this. And we also, in fact, speaking with the new development director for Meridian, who's also interested in the fiscal impact tool, we get the data from them that we use to populate it, and so we're able to update the data, and so we don't end up paying for the data as well. But the exchange is, we want to be able, if a city or an agency is going to give us their data, we want to be able to turn around and say, and here's the tool, instead of here's our, we'll take it and then we'll tell you your numbers later.
Thank you, Director. No more questions.
All right, are there any other questions? Go ahead.
Director, just a simple question on these numbers. Does this include, or would there be any change depending on the next item on the agenda being approved? I mean, is this based on where Compass sits right now? And if it increases by a whole other jurisdiction, another county, does those numbers change, or is that we're good either way?
Like, if I could, it increases the amount of data that we're dealing with. But we would probably want the poll to cover that area as well, and frankly, it's gonna be disproportionate. But I've been assuming those costs as part of this, and so the models themselves, the fiscal impact tool and the performance measure framework model, they're pretty scalable, and so it's really just a question of putting the data in and being able to use them that way.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, Craig, on the whole in the geographies, I know it can be really expensive. Sorry to get you green leaf or small, but at least to have it in a way, even if it's Compass gets the data and you can report out at least by portion of the district by our congressional districts. And I know the legislative districts are probably too small, but if there's some, maybe the counties would be a good one, so that it doesn't get disregarded by our legislators or federal reps. So, and then the other, on the fiscal impact tool, I spent so much time on that years ago. I think what we could learn from that, and this can come later, is that maybe we need a work group. The staff changes, and you lose that kind of critical mass of knowledge and application of the tool among the jurisdictions. So that might be something to think in the next UPWP, if a work group would be beneficial for the long-term maintenance and use of the tool. And then the performance measure framework, isn't that also a requirement for a TMA to have, we get evaluated on that in the triennial review? And that's all I have.
Okay,
Go ahead.
Yeah, to speak to the upcoming certification review that you're asking about, when I give the director's report in a bit. But yes, it's not actually a requirement that we do that, but we're encouraged to. And so, yeah, it's beneficial because it helps with assessing how we're doing with all the performance measures that we choose to adopt. What we're required to do is report on the performance measures that have been identified by Congress in the law, which are like freeway delay times and total traffic fatalities and safety related things like that. But we have others that relate to quality of life measures and economic vitality and issues like that. And this lets us touch on those.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
on the poll, I did like you mentioning working with the university. I know Boise State does their annual poll. The 400K amount, I don't know if would this come back before us if you were to award it to a certain entity to carry out the statistically valid poll. That's one question. And question two, I think as was mentioned just earlier, I would like to see cross-tabulated data within the statistically valid poll. That would be helpful, I think, to show within certain demographic bodies representative of the whole, what the sentiment is, how it's being represented.
I think what Mayor Hagman was suggesting is that before we actually do the poll, that we find out what's going to be in the poll. This executive committee.
Sure.
Isn't that it?
Yeah, it's a pretty big chunk, 400,000, and maybe you're less than that. I want to make sure that all the members were, getting the information that we find useful as much as possible without making it overly burdensome within the poll framework. If we could piggyback off Boise State and their annual poll, because I think their polling is statistically valid. I'm curious what they would quote to pull off a poll, maybe as a one-off supplemental. But yeah, I'd just be curious at having this item come back before us. So I'm okay with approving this list of items, but I would like to see that come back. And then on the fiscal impact tool, I think I'd be concerned too, because I think it was Tischler Bice that was used last time, and I know they're a local player. I think, as was mentioned in the prior comments, it's really important that either staff provides the update for us so it's usable. I know it's not that hard to update the levy rates, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Estimated cost of each average home parcel that's going in, but it's just so key that data is accurate for the tool to be useful, and the members really do need to be trained and update the data every year. So those would be my only comments.
All right, thank you. Are there any other suggestions or comments or questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. I'm gonna hide from Amy here, but there's ECC we're doing a poll regarding upcoming vehicle registration renewal. This poll, the Boise State polls, it'd be nice to have kind of a go-to spot to put some of those polls similar to where we have the plans, regional plans, and just what people are saying about transportation. If that's not something to think about, because I know that I don't know all the surveys and polls going on, but that would be really good information to take the temperature of whether it's for city comp plan or what have you, but anything transportation related. Be happy to send those to Compass to kind of compile.
Go ahead.
Yeah, if I could, I think that's a really good idea. That could also help us figure out exactly what the gaps are that we don't know yet.
Yeah.
So, for example, we have someone who is reasonably associated with the Boise State poll in the room right now. But they tend to ask one question related to transportation in that poll. And so what we need are, not like, is this important? Is transportation important? Which as just a quick side note, that a poll very similar to the poll that is conducted by Boise State, that concept of doing this same annualized structured poll started actually in Houston, where I am coming from. And one of the fascinating things with that is that long-term commitment to the polling revealed over time transportation as a concern for the residents of the Houston region, going from being like number 15 behind all of these other issues to having, they're now at like 4 or 5 years of it being the number one concern for residents in the region. And so there's a lot that can be learned from just that one question being asked on a repeated basis. But what we want to know are like, you know, what are your trade-offs between preferences for safety and mobility and speed and, you know, things like that. But the idea of consolidating, trying to consolidate polls would be really helpful. So we could certainly look into sort of, you know, coming up with some sort of master listing at least of those polls with links. I know that, for example, Meridian puts together, they do an annual satisfaction survey of some type, I think, for their residents. And having looked at that, there's some interesting stuff in there. I think I've heard that Nampa does something similar. I don't know if I've had a chance to review that one, but so there could be things like this that are out there that we can build off of. But we're gonna want to fill the gaps and then have them be directly related to, you know, the kind of things that we do as Compass. But that's really, really good idea. Thank you.
I'll start sending you stuff.
Okay, is there any other discussion? Go ahead.
Just a word question. It says it increased the Compass budget, but it sounds like we're reallocating funds that are already available. And in the document that you read, it says we're taking existing Compass funding. So are we actually increasing the budget or are we just reallocating funds?
It's if I could, so that's a question of, so Compass board makes a decision on how to spend the surface transportation block grant funds. And those are allocated, if you go back to the previous item, those are allocated in accordance with that formula. These are dollars from that pot of money. So it would be it's Compass ends up being the agency that is both the board that is both allocating the funds, and then the agency is adjusting its budget at the board's direction to accommodate those projects. When, for example, when we add funds to an ACHD project in the region, the board makes that first decision, but then the second decision is what ACHD does with their internal budgeting.
All right. Is that clear as crystal?
Clear as mud.
I get it.
Come on.
I give this 20 off me, she makes.
Say
Yeah,
what?
Mr. Chair, if
Go
I
ahead.
could maybe make some clarification. So there were 2 projects that ACHD had. One of them released about $3 million and one released about 3.7 million. These were big construction projects that were like $10 to $12 million each. Those bids came in extremely favorable. And so the way that we reprogrammed this is through a balancing action in the RTAC meeting. And so half of those funds have already been reprogrammed to other projects. And then we would be going back later this month for the remainder of those funds to be reprogrammed. There are about 4 projects that are brand new that would kind of be somewhat in competition for this money. There are some projects that have increases that would be ahead of these types of projects on the policy priorities that the board set. So this would still go to the RTAC meeting to determine how much funding this project could get. Today, we're asking if we can go forward with these projects to be considered. Hopefully that helps clarify a little bit more.
That clears it up. We're not authorizing the spending, we're authorizing to ask for the spending. Is that not correct?
That's absolutely correct. Yes.
Okay, well, good enough. Well, we had a good discussion. Is there any other discussions we need to have on this issue? If not, I would accept the motion to present this to the full board.
Well, if I could, Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
actually what we need really is just the executive committee basically just authorized me to submit the letter, and then we'll take it to RTAC and it'll work through that process.
Okay,
So it won't go, this action won't go direct.
okay, well then, you heard the motion.
I'll second it.
I can't make a motion.
No, we need to make a motion.
I'll go for it. Mr. Chair, I'll move that we submit the director's letter that was attached to the RTAC for requesting additional planning projects be included in the
All right,
Tiffin budget, I guess, yeah.
And I'll second that.
we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion or clarification? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any? None opposed, thank you. All right, moving on. The next item for consideration, you all have the letter, I expect, in your, there's been a request from Elmore County to, join the MPA.
Mr. Chair, if a motion's in order and in the interest of maybe making up some time on our agenda, I make a motion to recommend the acceptance of Elmore County into Compass.
Second.
Okay, you heard the motion. Is there any discussion? Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I have a question. Do we know what their dues would be?
Well, Craig would know.
Sure, okay, so,
It's not a
so,
large.
yeah, it's not a lot. Annually, it'll be in the $13,000 to $15,000 range with the population numbers that they have right now. The first year, of course, would be prorated.
Yeah.
So it'd probably be around 7,000 in the first year. So it's not a huge revenue source, but it builds our base and should be helpful.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second to recommend to the full board that they approve Elmore County as part of the association. All right, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, moving on. Craig has a legislative report. I'm
Okay.
sure that'll take 15-20 minutes.
I will try to get through this as quickly as possible. Give us just a moment to bring up some slides that hopefully will accelerate things a little bit. Okay, here we go. So quick overview can,
Your clicker was not on when I set it down.
okay, so let me try to. Oh, it's not on? Hold on.
No, so
Sorry.
on the side. There
Give
you
me just a moment.
go.
It's okay, we'll manually advance them.
Okay, right now.
There we go. Okay, good. All right, so just briefly, quick update on the legislature as a whole, and I know many of you tracked this already, so like I said, I'll try to go through these as quickly as possible. They announced, I think, at the start of the week that or maybe late last week, that they're aiming to conclude by the end of March. That may or may not happen, but that's the basic goal. Our lobbyists said that there are about 650 bills that have been introduced at this point. Those may be the bills that are actually trying to be advanced. There's a number of personal bills as well. The budget and budget related discussions do remain the focal point. We are tracking about roughly 12 specific bills or groups of bills that kind of form issues. And I'll report on those. Having ongoing legislative meetings, seeking an opportunity right now for me to go testify before the transportation committees about the Compass revenue study. Again, just trying to continue that conversation around the need for taking a long-term view of revenue issues. Lobbyists are active on our behalf regularly. Primarily right now, they're kind of focusing on paying attention to discussions around revenue and looking for opportunities to advance our needs as a region and on behalf of our member agencies. We talked recently about commentary piece that we submitted for publication on behalf of the executive committee that was not published. My feelings were a little bit hurt, but not too bad. So I'm going to propose in a few minutes revising that, and I'll talk specifically about what and how. I haven't drafted the new version yet, but I'll go through that here in a second. I don't want to spend much time on this slide, but just a reminder, those discussions around the budget and budget impacts and how those translate to ITD and Compass priorities are really what I think a lot of our interest is around right now. And so just to quickly remind you what this one is showing is the TECM funded projects in our region that are very, very likely to have to slip or be delayed due to bonding delays as a result of some of the funding cuts. And so that's part of why we're paying a lot of attention to what happens with the state revenue levels, because that could affect these projects as well as all of your agencies' budgets. So, the strategic initiatives program, that general fund transfer has been proposed for elimination this year. That it's 275 million total every year. I mean, every year it's a one-time program, but it's been set and it was proposed and adopted, and they're proposing not doing that this year. There's that works out to 110 million for local agencies and ITD at 165 million. ITD, as we learned at the board meeting last month, uses that 165 million in part to help them advance the bonding program to get those TECM projects moving. And so that's part of why this is important to us. At the regional level, the amount that adds up to for our local governments, and this is not Ada County government, but this is the jurisdictions in Ada County and Boise County and Canyon County, and what those numbers individually add up to, that go away with this cut. And so those should actually probably be showing as negatives in this proposal right now. There are a number of ideas being discussed to restore all or part of those funds, all different types of ideas and formulas and so on. So there's no specific proposal that's been released yet, but there are discussions around this topic. And frankly, I think there are so many ideas right now that it's difficult for any one idea to sort of be getting much traction. But there's potentially an opportunity to start focusing some of those, which is why I think updating that revenue related commentary to keep the main messages that were there, that we understand the need to potentially look at making cuts, but inserting this new idea that we should thoughtfully retain some of this critical funding, and then explaining the benefits of doing that for part of these funds, and then retaining the rest of it about needing to establish a long-term revenue solution. I do think that given the timing and some of the constraints on submitting commentaries, it might be more beneficial, rather than having, as the last one was, submitted on behalf of the full executive committee with everyone's names on it, maybe having this version come from the officers, or come from just me, even though they don't know who I am yet, and so that doesn't necessarily increase its chances of getting published. But if it's perhaps on behalf of the officers. So when I get a new draft done, probably in the next couple of days, I will circulate that, and hopefully we'll be able to reach an agreement on how to advance that. We're not going to do a vote or anything. It'll have to be done individually, but I just want to keep everyone aware of kind of what we're thinking on being able to continue this discussion.
Mr. Chair, Craig.
Yes, go
Quick
ahead.
question on this commentary. Is it on TECM and the strategic initiatives, or were you just referring to the latter, the strategic initiatives?
I think, well, if I could, Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
in order to make the discussion about the strategic initiatives matter, I think a reference to TECM is pretty important. So it wouldn't necessarily be like a specific about keeping TECM alive, because technically TECM's not on the chopping block in the same way that the strategic initiatives funds are.
Gotcha. That clarifies it. I thought the emphasis was on the latter, but I just wanted that clarification. So I do support, I think if there's ways to provide like case studies on how strategic initiatives was used, I think it would be helpful to highlight that.
That's a great idea. I'll send out a note this afternoon asking any of you for any suggestions you have, or anecdotes or stories or examples that you can point to, and try to work those into a 600-word that was already like 598 word piece. So there's gonna be something that gets cut to add the new stuff, but I think it'll be worth it. So we'll put that together.
Go ahead.
I'd like to get in and read the paper, because I sent you both the link that it was published in the Press Tribune on February 19th. So I sent you the link, yeah, it was weirdly in the hard copy, it was weirdly placed. It was like in the cloud.
Okay, so maybe it was published.
Place, so it was published, but it was in a weird format. So.
Not unusual for them.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't even remember what
Well,
day
we'll
of the week
track that
that
down.
was.
That may reassess here what we do with this, but thank you for that. But we've been looking, we've been searching and good to know. So thank you. Okay, well, perhaps that the whole discussion was moot. I apologize.
Check your legs. All right,
Yeah, I appreciate that though.
all right.
We will find it.
Yeah.
Okay, real quick on the items that we've been monitoring. There was the STAR program bill. So as a reminder for that, that's the one that basically lets the sales tax be deferred for a few years to pay for projects around new construction that results in a new commercial or retail activity that generates sales tax. So that actually passed the Senate yesterday and is done. It passed the House a week ago and then the Senate yesterday, so it should be on its way to the governor's desk. The next one is the one that cleans up some provisions around bicycle and pedestrian projects. Basically, it clarifies that federal dollars can be used for those, and if someone were to mistakenly implement a project, they don't go to jail. There's no criminal penalty associated with it now. It's all civil at this point with that bill. It passed out of the House Transportation Committee yesterday and is now going to the House floor. The next one is moving pretty quickly as well and will probably pass soon too. That basically just cleans up some language. There's no major policy change for us. There's no revenue change or anything like that, but it clarifies some language, and it's one that that our lobbyist has been just telling them that we support, although we're not actively supporting it. The next few here, this is the one we just talked about, this idea of partial or full restoration of some of the local transportation or some of the transportation funding for ITD and local agencies. There's no bill yet, but when that does come forward, we would expect to actively support that. Then there is House Bill 842 that has been presented as a cleanup bill for the HB 389 from a few sessions ago. That's one that I've spoken with a few of you about. The Association of Cities is opposing that, and I'm not sure if it has traction or not. If any of you, I'm sure many of you are familiar with it through your the agencies that you're or the organizations that you're members of. If you have thoughts, please let us know. We had been anticipating being able to write some form of a support letter for pieces of it, but I'm not sure that there's even the traction for a window for doing that within the framework of the positions that the Compass Board has already adopted. So paying attention to it and looking and tracking it very closely. But just noting that. The next few, really the next three rows are all related to that Compass housing and infrastructure position that we adopted this time. And so we're monitoring a bunch of different bills, but none of them are ones that directly, clearly affect or impact the Compass positions that we've adopted, or the Compass position that we adopted around housing and existing transportation infrastructure and capacity. And so we're not anticipating taking a position on it, but we are paying attention to them in case they're amended or they come back in a new form or something like that. And then the final one, HB 804, was introduced recently as well within the past 2 weeks, that addresses the proportionate share of highway funds, highway distribution account funds that are distributed to cities that are in more than one county and have a countywide highway district. So it's the bill itself was proposed was relatively simple, but then as people started to unpack it, it's been revealing itself to be very difficult to administer probably. And so the latest word on that is that there's probably not going to be movement on that bill, at least this session. And so we're, again, monitoring it. It would potentially impact ACHD and cities of Star and Eagle. And so, but it seems difficult to implement the way that it's written right now. That's it on the ones that we're officially tracking. There's a whole bunch of others that have little transportation elements, election related elements, stuff that we're paying attention to, but they're not ones that directly affect Compass. They could, have secondary effects, and that's part of why we're just paying attention to them. But that's all for my presentation. And so I really appreciate you telling us about this. I'll try to find we'll be looking for it. So thank you. If there are any questions or comments or feedback on these, happy to. This is a discussion, or it's presented as an action item, although we just do that.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
For the STAR bill, when it's passed and we've supported it, do we have a protocol of thanking the sponsors or the delegation who supported it?
Yeah, I can.
It's one of those.
I can work. I can
From the director of the board.
If I could, I can put that together and have the lobbyists.
Yeah,
Certainly to the sponsors.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And then more of an open statement as well. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, did we do F and A all together?
I
Or
can
do you have
do
more?
a quick. I have a really quick.
All right.
Just two things
Go ahead.
for item 5A, just informational director's report. Just want to note that we are coming up on our certification review process. We alluded to it and talked about it briefly earlier. I think those meetings are in April. What's that?
May 6th.
May 6th. And so you'll get more information about that next month. But that process is coming. It's really important for Compass and for the board. And so we'll keep you all very well informed about that as it moves forward. And then I just want to note the executive committee, part of your responsibilities coming up will be conducting my annual performance review as well. And so we'll start laying out the timeline in accordance with the bylaws for that process to play out in, I think, April, May, and June. But we'll be on top of that and getting that material to you as well. That concludes director's report.
All right, we have a status report that's memo only. Is there any discussion on that? This is status report on the transportation advisory committee. Memo only, it's on page 20. Right. All right, is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move on. Our next meeting is scheduled for the April 14th. Unless you did more business, we'll be adjourned. Adjourned, thank you. Thanks, everyone. We got it through.
That was our favorite project.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.